Welcome to DataVis DevTalk. I'm your host, Minhaz Kazi. Our today's guest is Marc Soares. Marc is the manager of analytics solution at ClickInsight. Marc is also a constant advocate for effective data visualization and storytelling. Marc, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Minhaz. It's great to be here.
So tell the audience a little bit about yourself. What is your role at ClickInsight?
I am the manager of our analytics solutions team at ClickInsight. We are a digital analytics consultancy. We're also a Google marketing platform partner. And my team is responsible for everything from implementing analytics on a website, setting up Google Tag Manager, creating reports and dashboards, often with Google Data Studio, all the way to conducting analysis and providing insights and recommendations to our clients. So you could say we do the full stack of digital analytics.
So you do a lot of visualizations with Data Studio. How did you get started with it?
I was interested in Data Studio from the very beginning. I started using it about as early as it was available. And I think there were a couple key benefits that I saw from very early on that attracted me to the tool. One was the native integration with Google Analytics. The other main benefit was the ease of sharing reports. You can share a link and the viewer can have access to that report even without logging in or downloading another application. And so for those two reasons, I was really attracted to Data Studio in the first place. And what's kept me interested is all the updates and enhancements that have been rolled out over time to really make it a more powerful reporting product.
So you started with Google Analytics data and you've been creating reports that you share with your team members and your clients. But recently you've been using Data Studio for other purposes as well. For example, you make almost weekly contributions to the Makeover Monday contest. So how did you get started with that, the whole practice of taking this new data set every week and then creating visualizations from that data set?
Makeover Monday is a community project where every week there's a new data set and visual posted, with the idea being that participants will take that same data set and create an improved version of the chart. I started participating in Makeover Monday even before I started using Google Data Studio. And it was for the reason of giving myself an opportunity to practice and improve my data visualization skills. And by having that different chart, different topic, different type of data set every week, it provides a great opportunity to practice and learn new skills. And with Data Studio, by forcing yourself to be in the tool regularly, I can keep my skills up to date and learn some of the new features and enhancements in the tool.
One of your visualizations were also included in the Makeover Monday book. What is your process for creating these visualizations? Like, how do you start with the data set? What is your process for picking chart types or fonts and colors? And like, what would be the size of everything? Where do you start? How do you go through the process? And how do you publish?
I think I have established a pretty consistent process over the time that I've been doing Makeover Monday. It always starts with the data. The data set's usually provided in a spreadsheet or CSV format. When I'm using Data Studio, the first thing I do is create a data source so that I have access to those fields in Data Studio. But before I jump into creating any charts or visuals, I like to get to know the data set a bit more. I take a look at what fields are available, what dimensions and metrics are in the data set, and that often requires reading some background material on where that data comes from. Often it's part of a larger report, or it was published as part of an article, or there's some more description about that data set. I think that's always important to understand the data before you start using it, to make sure that whatever interpretations you're going to make or however you're going to tell the story, that it's consistent with what the data actually represents. Once I get to know the data, I can go into creating some charts in Data Studio. I try to choose the most appropriate chart for the message that I would like to communicate or the story that I want to tell. Depending on whether I'm trying to show all the data or focus on a particular aspect of it, I may make different decisions about which charts are most appropriate. That often involves some experimentation in the tool, but once I've decided on what the most appropriate way is to visualize the data, I can then add to it with more visual aspects of colors and fonts and layout to really make a more polished final product. But I think that overall is the process that I follow every week with Maker Monday.
It is interesting that when you're talking about the visualization, it's not just the chart types, you also have the data, so you have to have some domain knowledge about the data. Then there's the storytelling part, like what story am I going to tell with this whole data, and then building a viz based on that, on those two principles. Your approach to data visualization seems to be very unique. You're using the common chart types like bar charts and scatter plots, but then you're operating within the same techniques and limitations, but you're coming up with something very unique. What inspires you? Like, how do you get inspiration for these unique approaches to data visualization?
Yeah, I think I draw inspiration from a lot of different sources. With many of the Maker Monday visualizations that I've created, I do try to push the boundaries of what's possible with the tool, in particular with Data Studio, and try to show something that perhaps people haven't seen before or they didn't think was possible with the tool. But at the same time, I always try to respect the data and the story that I'm trying to tell and make sure that the message is clear. And that the visual doesn't get in the way of that. And in that context, I have drawn inspiration from people like Edward Tufte and Stephen Few, who have written a lot about the field of data visualization and the principles of communicating clearly with information. I also draw inspiration from others that contribute to the visualization community. There are a lot of creative and talented people that create and share data visualizations, and I think I try and pull bits and pieces from everything that I see and apply that in my own work.
Talking about community, you've built a number of community visualizations and community connectors for Data Studio. This community is still young and growing. What do you think about the developer community and the prospects that a new developer has in building solutions with Data Studio?
I've done a bunch of work with the community connectors and visualizations, creating those custom components for Data Studio. One thing I should clarify is that I don't consider myself a developer. I can certainly code, and I'm comfortable with JavaScript and HTML and CSS, but I'm not a full-time developer, nor have I ever been a full-time developer. But I think that speaks to the ease with which the custom components for Data Studio can be created. It doesn't require an expert developer to be able to connect to data sources or create custom visualizations for Data Studio. You do need a bit of programming experience and knowledge, but I think what's more important is to understand the structure of the data, how it would be used in a report or dashboard, and putting that knowledge together, I think, gives anyone a really good ability to create these custom components. Right now, the DataVis community around Data Studio is still growing, but I think because of the framework that's in place, it provides a great opportunity for more developers to get involved and build out more custom components.
What would be your favorite tip that you'd give to our audience with Data Studio?
That's a good question. I think, or at least one of my favorite tips, is something that I do in my Makeover Monday visualizations very frequently. It's a rather simple thing, but I hide the page boundary. What it does is creates a very clean and crisp look to your visualization. The background fills the screen, and if you go into full screen mode, then you really have a true full screen experience. So it's something very simple, but I think it has a great impact on the final visualization.
When would you use a pie chart?
I think I may only use a pie chart to explain to you why you shouldn't use pie charts. They're certainly not my favorite chart type, and there are many reasons why other chart types are most often better.
All right, folks, that's the end of our show. Thanks again to Marc for being here. If you want to see more content on Data Studio, make sure that you subscribe to the GCP channel. And you can always visit our developer site at developers.google.com. Until the next time, keep making more visualizations.